Hello friends, so today's video is going to be a reading vlog as well as chat about rereading some favorites and then keeping you up to speed with what I've been picking up recently. I'm going to interrupt myself. I'm going to do a little bit of a book haul and then also a fun pet haul. So not hauling actual pets, but hauling things related to Luna Bear. But I'll start with the books, and this is actually kind of a fun combination of being a book-centered thing, but also a writing-centered thing. So a lot of you know that I absolutely love writing. I have a first book out in an epic fantasy series. I don't talk about it very much on my channel, just because, I don't know, I figure I like my channel to be about other people's works. But either way, I do really enjoy writing, and I want to continuously try to improve. And so I bought these. I've heard really great things about them. If any of you have checked these out and you are also very passionate about writing, let me know your thoughts on them. I only got these 3, but there's more than just these ones. But they are supposed to sort of give you a wider variety of concepts for how to write. In this particular one, it says The Emotion Thesaurus, a writer's guide to character expression. And so it's supposed to be highlighting different ways that we show emotion and how you as a writer can show that in your characters beyond just the typical, they smiled, they raised an eyebrow. Aside from those things, how you can further show what you want with your characters. And then they have the Positive Trait Thesaurus, a writer's guide to character attributes. I'm a very character-driven reader, and I strive to try and have that in my work as well. I really want the characters to feel alive, and so that one is especially important to me. And then they also have the Negative Trait Thesaurus, a writer's guide to character flaws, and I think that's another one that pairs really nicely. All 3 of these in general I think go together really, really well. So again, if you've checked these out yourself, let me know which ones you found to be the most beneficial. And also, if you're a fellow writer, let me know, because I would love to know who else out there enjoys writing. The other haul is thanks to Redbubble. So I am partnering with them for today's video, and they reached out to me recently because they started a new pet line. So now you and your pets, there's something for everybody, including them. And they reached out to me because they're like, well, we know you love your dog a lot. So it's always nice when even the companies you work with know you love your dogs. But anyway, they thought it'd be really fun for me to pick out some items that Sean and I could have that would match things that Luna Bear has. So we got ourselves some hats. This one's Sean, this one's mine. And it says, home is where the dog is. We got her a bandana that says the same thing, and it's so, so cute. And they also have the home is where the dog is on different items. So it doesn't just have to be bandanas and hats. You can get other sorts of things as well. We're also big mug people. So I got this mug because we love to travel, and I love the forest, and I thought this was so pretty. And I got Luna a pet blanket, and I was a little jealous when I opened the package because I was like, wow, this blanket's really soft, and I love me a good blanket. And so now she's currently just all cozy with her blanket in her bed. I'll have some other items that I really liked linked down below, so if you're interested in checking Redbubble out, that'll be there. It's also where I get all of my World Hoppers merch. If you don't know, I run a collaborative channel called World Hoppers, where all of the profit goes to charity, and that includes merch sales. And I have a coupon for 15% off. You can use it on any of this pet stuff, but you can also use it on your entire order. So thank you again to Redbubble for partnering with me and Luna Bear for today's video. The favorites that I've gotten around to recently, I reread both Fireborn and Flamefall. These are 2 of my favorite books of all time, and I reread them in preparation for the 3rd book, Fury Song, which is going to be released very soon. And I'm so glad I reread them because I already loved them. I already wanted to pick them back up. As soon as I finished them the first time, I wanted to jump right back into them. But I was like, oh, I have other things to read. But I'm so glad that I reread them because it was so great being able to take note of all the foreshadowing. It was great to have so many other things I could appreciate on the second read through. So, for example, a lot of what Rosario Munda has kind of taken inspiration from was Plato's Republic. And so it was really cool to be able to see those more this second time around, because when it comes to Plato's Republic as well as the Greek classics, which is another thing that Rosario Munda has nods to in these 2 books, it's been so long since I've really gotten into those. It's been since high school, which was a while ago. So recently my husband picked up Plato's Republic, and he and I have been chatting a lot about it. And so when I was reading Fireborn, I was like, oh my gosh, because all of the memories sort of were coming back as I was talking to my husband. And then so when I picked these up, I got to see all those too. Anyway, there's just so many great reasons for having reread this. However, the tabs were kind of out of control. And then also, speaking of rereading favorites, I'm currently rereading The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. So I've actually already reread this once before. It's my third time now reading this book. And these really colorful tabs were from my first reread. And I'm only about 100 pages into it, and all of these tabs are new. So I'm going back through and I'm tabbing it again. And it is a similar thing where there's bits of foreshadowing that I can appreciate more, or there's certain moments where I'm just like, oh, what a great, perfect way to represent this character so early. This little detail is just perfect for showing Kelsier being inspiring, or Breeze being Breeze, or the fact that Ham's always got to be philosophical. You know, all these different things that make you care so much about the characters. I can appreciate that more on this read. So anyway, I've been tabbing those up. I wanted to also mention some other books that I am reading and I have picked up recently. Because I've already read Mistborn twice, and this is my third time reading it, I don't mind reading other things at the same time. Normally, if I'm picking up high or epic fantasy, I don't want to pick up more high and epic fantasy simultaneously because it gets to be just a little too much. But again, because this is my third time reading Mistborn, I'm like, I mean, I know everything that happens. I also have tabs in there that are going to remind me of things. So I am also reading The Liar's Knot. This is the sequel to Mask of Mirrors. And I'm reading this with my friend Joanna, as well as kind of sort of Abby. Abby's already read this, but she's joined in on our chat so she can lurk and comment on our thoughts. So this is the second book in what I believe will eventually be a trilogy. The first one, Mask of Mirrors, is this Venetian setting. It's fantastical, but it's sort of a fantasy Venice. And you follow a woman who is a con artist who is trying to con her way into House Trimentis, which she does not realize is a noble house that is actually on the brink of financial collapse. And as a result, they are very, very secretive. They're very suspicious. They are trying really hard to not let it out that they are so weak, because the other noble houses will circle them like vultures if it's discovered. And so Ren is wondering why the heck her con is so much more difficult than usual. And then they are very highly suspicious of her. And then there's some other characters. There's a vigilante character as well. And then another individual who seems to be manipulating the houses. And then there is somebody who is sort of like law enforcement. And you don't know if one of our characters is the vigilante or if the vigilante is someone else. And Ren at some point thinks she knows who the vigilante is, but then she's not sure. And so the vigilante is known as the Rook. Ren herself is someone who takes on multiple personas, and one of them is a lot more involved in the lower classes, and then the other one is trying to infiltrate the noble houses. So there's a lot to the first book, and there's a lot of very heavy fantasy names, terms. There's just a lot to the fantasy elements, and there's so much scheming. So jumping back into the second one, it's kind of like a, wait, who is this again sort of moment when you're first starting. But I think the authors, because it is written by two individuals, the authors are doing a great job of keeping you up to speed. There's also essentially a previously on. It says the story so far. I also picked up Dance with the Fae Prince. This is within the Married to Magic world. And the first book, which would be Deal with the Elf King, is a standalone that takes place within the same fantasy world that this one takes place in, but they are all standalones, so they're all separate from one another. And so far, I liked Deal with the Elf King a little bit more. This one has almost a Cinderella feel to it, which I wasn't expecting. I just kind of jumped into it after having read the first one, and the audiobook recently came out for this, so I was like, I can listen to the audiobook while doing other things, because I can't really only listen to the audiobook with Liar's Knot. There's just way too much, so I have to I could just read it physically, but I'm doing immersion reading where I listen and I read simultaneously, whereas this one's good for listening to while I'm working out, listening to while I'm cleaning or doing laundry. So far I am a little over 100 pages in. And the setup is we follow this girl who, after her father it is thought that he has died. They're not sure, they never found the bodies, but he's believed to be dead. And her stepmother is very unkind, but our main character is to be married off, essentially to whoever can provide the best deal, because the stepmother just wants to profit as much as she can. And our character is married to a very mysterious man who doesn't really want anything to do with her. He decided to marry her. His trade was basically, I'll marry her if you give me this one book that I really want, and then also I'll pay you a bunch for her. And the stepmother's like, deal. And then our character's like, so I'm just gonna live in this house and not know who my husband is, and I don't know what's going on. And then there's Faye, basically. That's all I want to say, because I don't want to give away too much. But it is definitely a fun little story to pick up in between some of the more epic and depressing books. And then Half a Soul is the one I finished right before picking up these other ones. Half a Soul is so cute. I have talked about it a little bit more in a wrap-up I did recently, and I'll do a new releases wrap-up for June and talk about it a little bit more there as well, so you're probably going to be hearing me talk about this one quite a bit. But it is a Regency fantasy. So it's one of those stories where every little thing that a person does, like every little gesture or every little expression, just means so much. It's one of those stories where it's the details, you know? And it is a little bit of a love story, but also there's a lot to do with, I was surprised, there's a lot of commentary on society turning a blind eye to terrible things because it's upsetting. And especially within this very formal setting, I would say that the author does a great job of, even though it fits for that world, that time, it also is applicable now. And then there's also some commentary, or at least there's some aspects of PTSD that are shown in the story that I think our author did a really good job with. And the love story is just so cute. Oh my gosh. And our main character is somebody who at the beginning of the story, you see that when she was a young girl, she had half her soul taken by a fairy. And then as a result, she now has her emotions very muted. She doesn't really feel them strongly. She understands how she's supposed to feel about things, and she has this sort of distant feeling, but she ultimately doesn't really act the way she's supposed to. And again, this is a society where it's expected for you to be very proper and to behave a certain way and to say certain things and to have certain expressions. And because all those little details are important, she just never fits in very well. And so her cousin, who loves her dearly, wants to find the Lord Sorcier, who is this man who supposedly does 3 magical things before he even eats breakfast. Like, he's supposed to be this individual who is very skilled with magic. And so her cousin wants to see if maybe this individual knows how to cure our main character. It's a very, very sweet story. I loved it so much. It's definitely a new favorite. And I ended up tabbing this one up a little bit too. Not as intense as the tabs in the other one. So that's a little bit of what I'm currently reading, what I recently read. I also am hoping to pick up the Farseer trilogy, finally, books 2 and 3 within this next week, 2 weeks, and then jump into Ship of Magic. I'm going to be buddy reading that with Erin from Booked and Busy. So I'm really excited. Everybody I've mentioned, I'll have linked down below because everybody is lovely. And I'm going to go ahead and segue into some cute clips of Luna. She happens to be sitting right over there. Just some fun everyday life stuff, and then we'll get more into my thoughts on the books.
What? 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 What is it? Tell me. Luna, I love you. Don't you love me? Oh, do you? You have a hard time saying it, huh? no.
Hi, Luna Bear. Have you enjoyed the car ride? Yeah.
What? So, reading update. I read some more of Mistborn earlier, doing a reading sprint with some patrons. And then we went to walk Luna and we checked the mail and my copy of Fury Song came in. It's almost a month early and I just don't think I can wait. So it's close to, I think it's after 11 o'clock. Sean just went to sleep. So I think I'm just gonna start the book now and plan on reading it until I am done. I'm almost positive that once I start, I won't be able to stop. It's close to 500 pages, but I don't foresee much sleep happening tonight. I have my ambiance ready to go. Luna Bear's hanging out. She'll keep me company this evening. I got myself some water. I'm gonna light a wood wick candle, which I don't know why I specified that it's wood wick, just that I'm gonna light a candle. And then also, as usual, one of my ice drinks, which I always drink with a giant cup of ice because it makes it last longer and it kind of tones down the flavor. But these are caffeinated, which is the key component here. Updates on my reading. I should probably start with Fury Song because I did get through the whole thing. It was very good. I'll start with both Fury Song and Mistborn. We'll stick with Mistborn first. So this was my third time reading Mistborn and I was surprised how often there were still things that I wanted to tab, or there were still moments that I could appreciate. Wow, the foreshadowing. There's one thing in particular, and of course I can't really give details here because I'm trying to keep it non-spoiler, but there's one thing that has to do with the big bad, the Lord Ruler, that they reference, and I'm like, man, even on my second read through, I didn't think that that was that obvious, but then the third time around I was like, the foreshadowing. He's just a master at foreshadowing. That's one of the things. He's such a plotter with his books, and so you can really see the benefits of that because he lays out everything so well, but in a way that I think is subtle enough that if it's your first time reading it, you're not going to be overwhelmed and everything becomes incredibly predictable, but you get to appreciate it that much more on read-throughs. I was a little afraid that on a third read-through, not that I would be bored because it's my favorite trilogy, or tied for one of my favorite trilogies. I didn't think I would be bored, but I did think it was going to feel repetitive almost because I'm repeating the process of going through this story, but no, I still found things to love. There were still moments where I was like, oh, and all sad about certain things, and I did add a fair amount of new tabs, mostly at the beginning. These are the new tabs, all there at the beginning, and the really, really bright ones were from before, and then I added a few more later, but at some point, the Sanderlanche kicks in, and then you just don't have time. You just have to devour everything. And it was great, and I've enjoyed buddy reading this with my friends Ingrid and Roger. Over on my Patreon, we have been doing reading sprints, so we have another one lined up for the day that I'm filming this, for the Well of Ascension, and then we'll have another one for the Hero of Ages in case you want to join in. And then I also started a Discord channel through my Patreon for people who are reading this and want to talk about it a little bit more in depth. And then we'll have a live show discussing the trilogy, which I'm so excited for. I never get tired of talking about Mistborn. I feel like maybe BookTube's tired of Mistborn, but I never get tired of it. And then now to Fury Song. So my reading plans did get disrupted when I got this delivered. And I don't mind because it was great. I did definitely tab this one up quite a bit, not as much as the first two books because this was my first time going through it. But I will say, having reread the first and second books, there were moments, there was a particular line that one of the characters remembers her father speaking to her, and I immediately was like, there it is, because it got brought back in this. And I remember tabbing it when I was reading the first book, and then to see it here again, I was like, yeah, that's right, that's such a great line. And the way everything, it's a conclusion to a trilogy. You know, I can't say, just like with Mistborn, I can't go too in depth here because I got to keep it spoiler free. But I think there are equal parts tragic moments and triumphant moments, which I think is going to please a lot of readers. I think some people, they get bogged down when everything is incredibly depressing, and then other people feel like when the ends of series are way too happy and there's too many perfectly tied bows at the end that it gets aggravating because it doesn't feel like there were stakes along the way if everything just works out. And this, I thought, was the perfect combination of both yes kinds of moments that you're like, finally, yeah, and you get all pumped, and then there's moments where you're like, gosh darn it, and you get really sad. There was a moment where I definitely, as I was reading it, it was one of the most emotional moments ever in any book, and I just kind of had to look up at the ceiling like, okay, we're just gonna move on past this part, because similar to what I've said about some of my other books, I didn't want to ruin the pages with my tears. And I have a long-standing streak of not crying when I read books, and this one almost broke that. If I did cry, if I was a crier, if I wanted to just, I don't know, be in my feelings, this one would have done it. Because, oh my gosh, you'll see. I think it's hard because I've read the first two twice now, and then this one obviously only once. I think currently the second one might be my favorite. I just like the different things that are tackled in that second book. And I used to describe this as the Russian Revolution, but with dragons. But I know Rosario Munda says it's Plato's Republic with dragons. And the reason I always tied it to the Russian Revolution is just because of one of the characters and their setup for their story. It's a lot like Anastasia. And I think a lot of people really like that trope of this individual who was royalty and then something happened and now they're living among other people. And so Plato's Republic, but with dragons, is a perfect way to describe the first book, and absolutely that, as well as nods to Greek tragedies, are present in the series. But the second one, it kind of deviates and it becomes very much an examination of different forms of government, which the first one does too. The second one, I just think, does it so exceptionally well. And then this third one, it just hits very personally. And I don't say personally like to me, I mean for the characters, the way everything comes together and hits them. I think the arcs for all the characters were done in a very satisfying way. The trilogy as a whole is absolutely fantastic. And that's why with Mistborn, I was like, it's tied for one of my favorites, because this one's up there too. As for the other things I got around to, I was not able to get much further into The Liar's Knot, so I'm a little bit behind. So I will be continuing on with this one. And then also, I ended up picking up What Moves the Dead, which is by T. Kingfisher. And a lot of you have seen that I absolutely fell in love with T. Kingfisher after reading Nettle and Bone. And even though it was only one book by her, I was like, a new favorite author. And I picked up this one and I really liked it. She is gifted when it comes to being able to write a great story in a short amount of time. This is a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher, which is an Edgar Allan Poe story. And I really enjoyed it. It's a perfect thing to pick up if you're somebody who likes to read something creepy on Halloween, because it is creepy and it's so short that you can 100% read it on the actual Halloween day. But I think she did a really good job of giving explanations for the horrific things that are happening, and that strangely sort of made me less fearful and creeped out because there was always an explanation, but it was still scary. It was still creepy. I didn't love it the way that I loved Nettle and Bone, but I still really enjoyed it, and it's the perfect just pick up in an evening kind of read, which is what I did. It's so short that I was like, I'm going to read this tonight, the day that it came in, and that's what I did. To offset all of that, I also completed Dance with the Fae Prince. And this one is, I mentioned, part of the same world. It's called the Married to Magic novels. And I had read Deal with the Elf King earlier this year. And then the audiobook for this one came out. And I was like, oh, this is a good one in between all the other stuff that's serious or depressing or creepy or very high fantasy. So this one, it follows a girl. It's a Cinderella-esque feeling because at the beginning she is living with her two sisters and stepmother, and then she ends up being married off to this mysterious man, and he doesn't really want anything to do with her. He agreed to marry her basically for a book that she was in possession of, and she doesn't really know what's going on, but there's mysterious things happening in the woods outside his home, and then eventually there's the inciting incident, and then the plot kind of picks up from there, and you get exposed to the Fae world, as well as just in general a world with fantastical beings. And I liked the examination of being in a home where you have been abused, but you almost aren't aware of that. I think the author handled that quite well. I will say that I didn't love the love story between the characters in this book, and I didn't love the characters themselves. I didn't dislike them, but I also just didn't really love either of them. But it was definitely a fun, like I said, it so offsets everything else. This kind of puts you in a good mood. It's fluffier, it's happier. You never really feel too scared for the characters, which sometimes you need. Sometimes you need that comfort read, and I definitely think that that's what this was. As for my reading plans, now moving into this week, I said I wanted to finally get back to Liar's Knot and finish that up. I had mentioned before wanting to jump into Farseer and complete that trilogy before Ship of Magic, which is still the plan. I think I will have a reading sprint here coming up with Erin from Booked and Busy very soon, so I'm going to try to finish Farseer and then jump right into Ship of Magic, maybe with that reading sprint. Of course, I will also continue rereading Mistborn. But anyway, that's it for what I've been reading and what I'm planning to pick up here soon. A big thanks again to Redbubble for partnering with me on today's video. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.